of Ask a CMA. As you can tell, it's just me right now. And for today's episode, I thought we would talk about kind of the history of the Salvation Army, and a couple, or our structure, I guess is a better way of saying it. So our history and our structure. We've talked on a lot of subjects about what the Salvation Army does. We've had some wonderful people come on and talk about their particular jobs within the Salvation Army. But I want to kind of just start from the beginning of how it was started. And if you see me looking down, it's because I have my phone and I've got some notes on there because I don't want to mess anything up, and I want to make sure I'm staying on point. So, the Salvation Army was founded in 1865 by a man named William Booth. It was founded in the East End of London, and the reason why it was founded, William Booth was a Methodist minister, and during that time he looked around at his hometown, the East End of London, or where he was living, and he noticed that there was this huge group of people that weren't being ministered to. That a lot of the churches at that time and around where he was had neglected this large group of people who truly needed to be ministered to, but not only ministered to, but just have their human needs helped with. And that was the poor. It was the addicted. It was the prostitutes. It was the criminals. It was these people that he looked around and he didn't see being invited into any other church. That he looked around and saw that they weren't really welcome at a lot of the churches. So William Booth left the Methodist Church and started the Salvation Army. And that's how we got our start. It was in the East End of London, and from there we've went from London to all over America, to all over North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa. The Salvation Army is all over the world now, but it started in one little spot in London, England, by one man named William Booth, who along with his wife, Catherine Booth, started this great thing. So, I'm going to read off a couple statistics for you now, just so you get a picture of how vast the Salvation Army is. A lot of times whenever I talk to people, and I've been in a lot of different communities. I grew up in Danville, Kentucky. That's not how you say it in Kentucky. In Kentucky, you say Danville. Not Danville, Danville. But I grew up in Danville, Kentucky. I worked in Richmond, Kentucky. I've been to different churches, Salvation Army churches in Florida, in Tennessee, here in Texas, in Kentucky, and North Carolina. And one thing I've kind of noticed about these communities is sometimes people look at the Salvation Army and they only view it as being in their community. The Salvation Army is all over the world. And here's a couple statistics for you. So worldwide, the Salvation Army has 1.6 million members. That includes senior soldiers, adherents, and junior soldiers. So let's break those down a little bit. What does it mean to be a senior soldier, an adherent, and a junior soldier? So if you are a senior soldier, that means that you are over the age of, I think it's 15. I could be wrong on that. I apologize. But what it means is that you have become a senior member of the Salvation Army Church. If you look at a Salvation Army officer, which is a pastor, right? They wear a uniform. The uniform is a tunic, a jacket, a dress shirt, a tie, pants, or a skirt, right? And they have these things on their shoulders that are red. Now, each officer has a different symbol or a different amount of stars representing their rank as a pastor. If you look at the Salvation Army, it's kind of set up quasi-military, right? So if you're fresh out of training, you're a lieutenant, then you're a captain, a major, so on and so forth, until you get to general, which is the main guy. There's only one general. Now back to soldiers. If you are a senior soldier, that means that you have read what's called the Soldier's Covenant. It might have a new name, but the Articles of War is what it used to be called. Now it's called the Soldier's Covenant. And in there, it states what the Salvation Army believes. Now, we're not going to go into that fully this episode. We're going to save that for another episode. But it means that you've read it, you've took soldiership classes, you understand what the Salvation Army believes, and you agree with it, and you want to become a member of the church. You then will sign a soldier's covenant, and you will have a uniform. The difference being between an officer's uniform and a soldier's uniform. An officer is red, a soldier is blue. If you ever see somebody with a white shirt, a black tie, black pants, and blue epaulets on their shoulder that have a white S, that means that they are a senior soldier in the Salvation Army. Now the next one, adherent. What does it mean to be an adherent? An adherent is somebody who has taken the soldiership classes, but has a few things that they're not really fully ready to commit to being a senior soldier. Whenever you become a senior soldier, that means that you no longer drink, you no longer use tobacco. There's a lot of different things, and there's some different reasons for that. And once again, we're not going to go into it right now. I'm going to save this for another episode. But whenever you become an adherent, that means you've taken the soldiership classes. You still would like to be a member of the church, but let's say you still smoke. And you're working on giving up smoking, or, it's just something that, you smoke, or you might have a beer now and then. That's perfectly fine. It's okay. You can become an adherent, which means that you still believe in God, you still believe in the mission of the Salvation Army, you still want to be a member of the church, but you're not quite ready to be a full-fledged soldier yet. That is an adherent. A junior soldier is a junior member of the Salvation Army Church. So it's for ages, 5 to 12, I believe, that age range. Elementary, young middle school kind of age. And that is, you've been coming to the church for a little bit, and you like coming, and you want to be a junior member. It's kind of like being a senior member, but not as, it doesn't require, you still take junior soldiers classes, but it's not as in-depth as being a senior soldier, if that makes sense. So let's talk about a couple other things. All right, so we've touched on what an officer is. An officer is a pastor in the Salvation Army. They wear the red on their shoulders. We talked about senior soldiers. We've talked about junior soldiers, and we've talked about adherents. Now I'm going to tell you a very special word. That word is corps. C-O-R-P-S. Not corpse. Corps. What is a corps? In the Salvation Army, whenever we say the word corps, that is referring to our church, our local church. Now, let's break that down even a little more. Whenever we say corps or whenever we say church, what are we talking about? You might have thoughts of, a big cathedral or whatever church you may go to. But that's not what it is. That is the building, absolutely. But a church or a corps is not a building. It's the people. It's the members of this community, specifically the members who attend the Salvation Army. That is the corps. So whenever you watch these videos or you hear me talking and you hear me say core, remember that means the church. So for instance, right now, I am the CMA, which means Core Missions Associate for the Salvation Army Corpus Christi Core. It's a long title, so it's a lot of words, so I'm sorry if I stumble a little bit. But I attend the Corpus Christi Core. I am a member of the Corpus Christi Core, the Salvation Army Church here in Corpus Christi. All right. So there's a few other things about the Salvation Army that makes us a little different. For instance, we are big into acronyms. CMA, Core Missions Associate. That's my job. My job is that of a youth pastor, but also doing more. I touched on it on another episode. So now I'm going to throw a couple acronyms at you that I'm going to kind of break down, and hopefully by doing this, we can break down the structure of the Salvation Army and how it is ran. Okay? First acronym is DHQ. DHQ. It stands for Divisional Headquarters. What is that? So, in the Salvation Army, you have, like I said, we're all over the world, right? Well, we're broken up even more. So we're broken up into territories, or we're broken up into, for instance, we have NHQ, National Headquarters. So we'll start there. National Headquarters is the headquarters for the United States of America, located in Washington, D.C., NHQ. Okay. So, each country is then broken up into territories. In the United States, we have the Southern Territory, which consists of Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and the Virginias / Maryland. Okay. That's a lot. That's the Southern Territory. Then you have the Western Territory, you have the Central Territory, and you have the Eastern Territory. Eastern Territory, think of Northeast, right? New York, that area. Central, think of the Midwest, Colorado, Illinois, all that. And then Western Territory, California, Hawaii. There you go. That's the different territories there are in the United States. Each territory has its territorial headquarters, where you have your main people or your main officer who kind of oversees the territory. Each territory, as we already stated, is broken up into divisions. So let's just, to make it as simple as we can, let's just talk about the Southern Territory, and we're going to talk about where I'm at, the Texas Division. Now, Texas is its own division. However, there are some that have 2 states, 3 states. For instance, ALM, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi. That's its own division, those 3 states. Texas, we're our own division. And we have, to bring it back, divisional headquarters. There at divisional headquarters is where everybody within that division, all the different corps, all the different officers that are stationed at those corps, report to DHQ. I hope that makes sense. I've been in the Salvation Army since I was 5 years old, and I'm still learning. And so it takes a while to kind of really break it down and how we're kind of structured. But you have an officer stationed at a corps. So for instance, here we have Captain Patrick and Lieutenant Laura, who are stationed here. They report to DHQ in Dallas, in Texas, right? They then The officers there at DHQ then report to THQ, Territorial Headquarters. Territorial Headquarters then reports to National Headquarters. National Headquarters then reports to International Headquarters, which is the main headquarters, which is in England. Hope that kind of breaks it down. There's a whole lot of moving parts within the Salvation Army. I don't want to flood your brain too much, but let's just do a couple more little acronyms. Try to break this down a little bit more. So that's how we're structured as far as territories, divisions, and headquarters. Okay. Now we're going to get into some of the position titles that different Salvation Army officers have. So, let's start with territorial. So you can have your territorial commander, your TC. I cannot remember who it is right now, and I feel really bad. I think it might, I'm not even going to guess because I don't want to get it wrong. I think I know who it is, but I'm not like 100% perfect, and I don't want to get it wrong. But TC, Territorial Commander. Then you have your DC, your Divisional Commander. I do know that one. Here in Texas, the Divisional Commander is Ronnie Raymer, Lieutenant Colonel Ronnie Raymer. Now, you have in Divisional, you have DYS. That is your Divisional Youth Secretary. That is your Salvation Army officer who has been stationed at a DHQ who oversees the youth programs for that division. For instance, here in Texas, our DYS is Captain Matt Cunningham, and he oversees the youth programs here in Texas. We also have our divisional secretaries. Now, this isn't, whenever you think of secretary, sometimes you can think of somebody just sitting at a computer, just taking phone calls, putting files up, stuff like that. The divisional secretaries, along with the territorial secretaries, and even more, to go back to the DYS, the TYS, the territorial youth secretaries, the divisional secretaries, they're usually over certain things, such as the men, or if it's a couple, you will have, the man will be over all the men's programs in the division. The woman will be over all the women's programs in the division. Same thing with the territory, right? The territorial secretaries. If it's a couple, the man will be over all the men's programs in the territory. The woman will be over all the women's programs in the territory. It gets very confusing, okay? But once you get used to it, once you get involved in the Salvation Army, it kind of becomes like your own language. Like I said, I've been in it since I was 5, but I'm still learning. So there you go. I don't want to add too much more, because I don't want to melt your brain. But that's just a little starter about how the Salvation Army is kind of broken down, how we're structured, and how we got our start. One last thing that I really want to touch on before we close out this episode. The Salvation Army was founded in 1865 by William Booth in the East End in London to minister and to reach the needs, to help those people, the poor, the addicted, the criminals, the prostitutes, the people who were being shunned by society. That's what the Salvation Army was started as. And even though it has grown, that is still our mission. We still work to meet the needs of those who might be shunned by society, of those who are struggling, we still work to meet those needs and to show them who Jesus Christ is. So even though I talked about a lot of different things in this episode, all of it works to meet that mission. All right, guys. See you later.